you're breaking stereotypes, I think. Like a white male from Nebraska, grew up on a farm, is super comfortable with movement and singing and dancing. You're untethered from the confines of masculinity and femininity. You know, you're not in a box.
Right. Which is one of the reasons I got out of there, because like that was something like I was clearly a black sheep.
Christian, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
It's good to meet you. You know, to be frank, I've always had a curiosity about RPG and role-playing games, but I've never participated. I'm sorry I couldn't make it. It's been such a kind of busy schedule the last couple of weeks, and I know I was trying to tag along on one of them, but I'm ready to learn.
All right.
Tell us, how long have you been participating in role-playing games?
Well, you know, I actually took a late start to it. The first time I played one was probably 2008, and it was in college.
Okay.
I'd heard of it. Had some friends who had tried it, but I grew up in a small town. I grew up on a farm. You know, I had never even been brought to it in
exposed
any
to
way.
it, right?
Yeah. The nearest place I could buy a book was an hour away.
Oh, okay.
So, but I say that because I didn't play the actual games with like rules and such until 2008 in college. But I mean, I started playing role-playing games when I was a child, right?
Yeah, without even knowing.
Without even knowing.
Yeah.
And like not even that, war games. My brother and I would create these very complicated sets of rules with our army men and use, you know, meter sticks to like see how far each tank or airplane or whatever could go on a turn.
Whereas your peers, at what age does one normally or typically get into it?
You can get into them really early.
Okay.
Earlier editions, I mean, it's been around, it'll be 50 years.
Oh, wow.
Dungeons and Dragons has been around for 50 years this spring, I believe. And you can start really early. Now there are specifically versions of it geared to younger ages. You can start as early as 4 years old.
Oh, wow.
Rolling dice, deciding what you want to do when the dungeon master tells you what's going on.
Sure.
And they make specific rules that are easier to understand and like now write adventures specifically that are geared towards that age group.
On average, how complex are these games, or is it more so kind of like an if this then that type protocol?
Both.
Oh.
They can be as simplified or as complex as you want. So like the first TTRPG, tabletop role-playing game I ever played was Shadowrun.
Okay.
And that's one of the more crunchy systems. It's very difficult to understand. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of rules, but a really fun, interesting cyberpunk world, that you can dive into.
And that's what's interesting. It's just like something that is that complex. What about it is appealing in the front end that keeps you persevering?
That's a great question. I mean, a lot of times if you love rules, you can dive into that section. If you don't love rules, there are systems that are made for you. There's some that give you a framework and there aren't a lot of rules. There are some that don't require dice. It's strictly role-playing. It's situation, what do you want to do? And then you attempt it. Right?
Yeah.
If you use a dice, that's kind of your character's way of seeing how well you do it. That's really it is. So you can really lean into story-driven, or you can lean into rules-driven, which is more wargaming, or you can find somewhere in the middle, which is generally where it's kind of like D&D lives.
So would you say that's kind of the main spectrum with both ends and then the middle ground?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're here because we want to learn more about RPG as well as how you came to create Rough Magic games. But these episodes are a character piece, and I'd love to hear like how we arrived here. What did you end up doing if you were to continue with school? You know, let's say like high school, maybe even pre-high school. What was gauging your, garnering your attention back then?
You know, I spent a lot of time by myself. I grew up on a farm out in the middle of nowhere.
What's the age difference with your sibling?
My nearest sibling is 5 years older than me.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so in a lot of ways, you know, when you're that far, you know, my dad was out working on a farm that was miles away, or, you know, he worked
Illinois?
Nebraska.
Yeah.
So definitely on the plains, lots of open sky and horizons. And he'd be away for a long period of time. A lot of times we were just left to our devices.
Sure.
And by left to our devices, we had a list of chores to do, and we had to make those as fun as possible.
Okay. Good for you guys.
Right? So that's kind of how we got into that imaginative space. How we made chores, we turned them into a game.
Can you give an example? Like what chore and what game?
Yeah. So one was like just feeding cattle, right? And we had a tractor and a thing that would pull the silage and hay mix behind us, and we'd dump it into the trough and such. And so instead of feeding cattle and filling the trough, we were loading turrets with ammo.
Oh!
And we had to do it before the army arrived, and to set a set of urgency, urgency up so that it became this really fun, energetic thing that we wanted to do and complete.
Was this without the parents even knowing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Did they ever observe any of this? Or you said they were away? Or?
Generally, my mom worked, and my dad, was often away. He also sold seed corn, so he was traveling to customers across the country.
Is it sweet corn?
Seed corn.
Corn.
So seed for corn and soybeans. Just he sold seed to farmers.
Oh, okay.
And that traveled. He
sold. I just had a farmer on recently.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That's funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they didn't get to really observe it. If they did, I'm sure they would have been happy with what you came up with.
I mean, they do have one picture when we were very young. We had to move some of this old irrigation pipe, and we thought it'd be a good idea to use our Red Ryder, and it was a terrible plan. It did not work. But there's pictures of us trying to engineer and find a fun way to do this and use our toys.
Okay.
So they'd see it sometimes if they're around.
So pretty latchkey. Did they try to provide any other opportunities for you to cultivate interests?
Yeah, I mean, they were great. One wonderful thing about growing up in a small place, in a small town, is you get the opportunity to try a lot of things. Not everything, because you don't have everything. But I got to play sports. I was, I was all-state in two sports.
Oh, wow.
And I also was in the musical. I was in the one act. I was all-state choir.
Which sports?
Football and wrestling.
It's big football state, right?
Yeah, big football state.
My buddy loves Omaha.
Yeah, we don't have a pro team, so we only have the Huskers.
Yeah,
so,
the college.
Yeah, we have the college, and so it's volleyball and football for them are the big ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and bowling. Pretty good at bowling.
And at that young of an age, you were also dabbling in the arts.
I was, yeah. I went to a Catholic school, and we had choir practice once a week.
Okay.
We'd go in, we would sing hymns, we would learn. So I was doing choir, and I was inundated with music at a very early age.
Okay.
And my siblings were going to the Catholic high school, which I eventually went to, and they were doing one acts. They were doing choir. They were doing the musical. And so I was one of my earliest memories, I was 5 years old. I remember my oldest brother, who was 14 years older than me, played the Tin Man his senior year. And I got to go backstage and touch his nose. And as a little kid, that was one of the most magical things that has ever happened to me. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is great. And that's kind of what created my love of theater and pretend and imagination.
Oh, wow. So then if you're going into high school now, what did you gravitate more towards one thing, or you're still kind of like a jack of all trades?
I was all over the place because I could be,
Wow.
I would wake up at 4 a.m., do chores, go to one act practice or speech practice, whichever time of year it was. And then I would go, and then I would lift weights.
Was speech mandatory?
No, it was an elective.
Why choose it?
Because I was good at public speaking.
You already were self-aware that you're like, I'm good at this.
Yeah. I developed language early as a kid.
Yeah.
I was a people pleaser.
Okay.
And my dad was a salesman. He was good at talking to people. My father taught me hard work and the art of bullshit.
What do you mean, like literally, or just by observation?
By observation. By observation. And just making me work a lot.
Okay. Oh, that's so great. Jack of all trades. Did you excel in high school? In the academics?
I did pretty well. I had A's. I didn't have I didn't have a 4.0, but I had a 3.6 the entire time.
What would you attribute that to?
Memorization. Keen memorization.
Did it help that you had a full plate?
No, probably not. It probably actually hindered. it.
What would you do if you had more free time? Just study more then?
No, I would have hung out with friends.
Right?
I
feel like that's what I did. I feel like I lacked discipline in high school. I had too much free time.
I did too much stuff because I didn't want to work on the farm. Because like if I was in an activity, I didn't have to do work at home.
Okay. So did you immediately jump into extracurriculars after school then, aside from choir and speech, or those were part of the day curriculum?
Yeah, usually it was sports at night.
Sports at night. Wow. What time do you go to bed? Like 8 o'clock?
I usually got home around 8. I would do whatever homework I had, and I'd crash by 10.
Wow. Were there certain moments in high school that were notable or impactful, formative, that you can recall?
Yeah, I mean, some of my best memories were doing one act.
Now to clarify, is one act a show?
Yeah,
or is that?
It's just a one act play. That's all it is.
Oh,
it's a one act play.
So what, like an hour long? Or?
Yeah, about.
That's a long show.
Yeah. The biggest thing is there's no intermission, right? It's just you sit down and watch it.
How many lines?
Depends on your part. There were quite a lot depending.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, I was really good at memorization, which is why I did okay being an actor as well.
Now, did it come from attributing the story, like taking the like internalizing the story of that role, which helped in the memorization?
Oh yeah, you have to put it in your body. That's
right?
a huge part of being an actor. At least for me, it was. I guess
there's a cool Korean game show on Netflix called The Devil's Plan. We're watching it right now, and one of the games, they had 20 minutes to look at a very intricate picture, and then they had 10 questions, trying to have them recall little details of that. It was like a giant picture, whereas like, what was the guy in the scrubs holding, or like, it's just like, or what's today's date, and like there are details around that you have. It's not explicit. You have to put pieces of a puzzle together, and it's interesting. And to me, like if I were to do it, it's like trying to attribute a story to it, right? The people that are good at memorizing names like immediately, how do you think they do it?
See, that one I can't figure out. I'm terrible with names.
I think it's attributing a special, like a unique detail,
a
right?
unique detail, something that catches your eye.
Yeah.
I will memorize faces very easily.
Okay.
I will recognize people that I saw years and years ago, and they won't remember me, but I remember them from exactly when
to
I
the
met
name
them.
though as well.
No, I won't. I can't
like,
place to a name though.
Right. Just like
I
know you from.
I know you.
Yeah.
We met at this place. We did this thing.
Okay.
But I won't remember the name because I remember the experience that's attached to it rather than.
So if you were interested in improving, what do you think you would focus on?
It'd have to be, gosh, I don't know. What would it be? I would have to probably.
I think a good practice to put in place is like your ability to repeat their name back to them. And if you don't have that ability, you don't know the name.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to say, can you repeat your name again? Like immediately after rather than 30 minutes later.
I know. The trick is, like my wife, when we go to new places, my wife is really good. She's learned how to introduce herself to get a name.
Yeah.
We have this signal we make when I can't remember someone's name.
That's a good trick, yeah.
And then she'll come in, and she's great, right? We're able to work
that's
a room
good. You got each other's back. That's good. That's good.
That's generally how I work my way around it.
That's good. That's good. Any other formative moments in high school?
I mean, work ethic was big in sports, right?
Yeah.
Because I learned it on the farm, but like practice, wrestling and football are not easy sports.
You did wrestling too?
Yeah.
Oh,
I was all-state wrestling as well. And it's you have to physically endure a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And you have to show up every single day to better yourself, right? And looking back, like I loved playing football. Football's still my favorite sport. It's so much fun. I don't really watch it that much anymore because I don't have the time, but like I really enjoyed it. Wrestling, I look back and it was mostly just pain that I remember and losing weight, and that I didn't love so much. So
yeah, that can be stressful.
Yeah, less fun memories of wrestling, but I did learn a lot, and I was working both my physical side and my intellectual side in different ways, and my social side. In such a small town, it's easy to, like, everyone's famous in a small town is the famous line, right? So you have to cultivate a certain image to maintain in that small town, because if you are in sports, if you're doing the play, you're on the front page of the paper. Everyone knows what you're doing. Everyone knows your business.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned how to maintain every part.
Well, you were rewarded for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you were.
Okay. So with that, like, where do you feel like what was the next step after high school then?
I knew I wanted to do theater because this was before I'd been really introduced to much else, right?
Okay.
That was my art. That was how I escaped through art.
Escape the state or escape life?
Oh, I stayed in state. I tried to escape state. I got accepted to a few places out of state, but I was also learned to manage money. So
sure.
Yeah, I wanted to be in New York.
Okay.
I wanted to go to New York.
Wow.
But then I found out it was like $60,000 a semester and not including living expenses. And I'm like, or maybe I'll just stay in Nebraska and not pay anything almost.
Yeah.
And so that's what I ended up doing.
So if we were to fast forward, like looking back, do you feel like it would have been necessary to go to a place like New York?
If I had wanted to do bigger things.
Or if you weren't doing rough magic right now, could you get your foot in the door by going to New York at this point in time without needing the education?
I think going for the education is what gets your foot in the door. You meet the connections you meet there
through education
are the ones that you stick with.
I see.
Because connections I made back in Nebraska have followed me here, or I have connected me with new people here.
Yeah.
And so I was able to create some really fun, great theater with people who were connected through that Nebraska experience, right? This is the closest big city that people flock to.
Okay.
So I was able to make connections, even with people I didn't know back then. But as soon as you find out they're from Nebraska, there's no one in Nebraska. You're basically family if you meet another person from Nebraska.
I love that.
There are more people that live in Denver than the entire state of Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's not uncommon. So when someone would be like, "Oh, I know so and so from Nebraska," there's a chance I might know them.
Okay.
You know?
What were what were your parents' opinions of you seeking out theater?
They were not thrilled.
Okay. What did they want for you?
Anything that made money, you know. I'm sure my dad would have loved me to go to medical school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he would have loved that.
For the sake of money, though.
For the sake of money.
Same. Yeah, same.
Yeah. He was supportive that he knew that I didn't want to stay on the farm and do that sort of work, which had been the trend in the family.
In high school, did you have an inclination towards the sciences?
No, not really.
That's interesting.
I had an inclination towards literature.
Okay.
And music and the arts, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the college you landed at, it had a theater program.
It did, and in fact, it had quite a bit of money from Johnny Carson.
Oh, nice.
Because it was the same program that Johnny Carson graduated from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you did to kind of appease your parents at the time?
I always had a job.
Okay.
I worked from like day one. I worked.
So you didn't feel like you owed them anything?
Yeah. I took out my own loans.
Wow.
They'd help me occasionally, you know, obviously, like you do, like, because, you know, kids are idiots.
Yeah.
Know? Just because you're 18 doesn't make you an adult.
Yeah.
And I made mistakes, right? You know, my car would break down. They'd help me with that, right?
Okay.
They paid my phone bill.
So you weren't ousted for going towards theater.
No, I wasn't ousted. I'm still very close with my family. They didn't necessarily.
It's good to hear that.
Yeah,
okay.
They're just kind of like, maybe not do that.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of money, you know. College in general is a lot of money. And at that time, did you want to do traditional, like, classical theater or like Hollywood type stuff?
I wanted to do, originally when I went to college, I was like, I want to be on Broadway, right? Because I was doing musicals, I could sing. I was like, this is, you know, I want to do Broadway. And then I got into college and I was like, that program didn't actually do musicals very often.
Okay.
And the music and theater were completely separate schools. And so then I started getting into new work. I started getting excited for like creating theater. I'm like, I didn't know this was an option.
What does that mean?
It means creating something from scratch.
Oh.
The first play I did in college was completely movement based. There are no words. It was a lot of dancing. It was a lot of movement to create a story based on music.
I love this. In the sense of you're breaking stereotypes, I think. Like a white male from Nebraska grew up on a farm is super comfortable with movement and singing and dancing. You're untethered from the confines of masculinity and femininity. You know, you're not in a box.
Right. Which is one of the reasons I got out of there, because like that was something like I was clearly a black sheep. Like I was, you know, people liked me. I was well liked throughout the community, but I was also like I was not conforming.
Did you find other peers that were in that same boat?
I did. I mean, my best friend, who has been my best friend since I think 6th grade. He and I always stuck together. Like that was one thing. Like we both understood that like this isn't it, right? This isn't the only thing we have to do. We don't have to answer to these, you know, to these people. We can do something else. We always can.
Where do you attribute your ability to be comfortable in your skin?
That's tough. I don't know. I think at a certain point, you know, like every kid gets teased at one point in their life, right? And I think at a certain point I stopped caring. That's very mature though for a young kid. Yeah, I think the first time I had a bully, I've also always been a big kid.
Okay.
And a strong kid.
Yeah.
Because I grew up on a farm, right?
Yeah.
And so the first time I had a bully or someone attempt to be a bully, the very first thing I did was like, okay, do you want to fight then? And of course, no, they didn't. I was bigger than them.
Yeah. So why even start something?
Power. Every kid just wants to feel comfortable and wants to feel, I don't want to say they want to feel powerful, but they want to feel like they have a place.
Okay.
And accepted in that place. Some kids, the only way they can do that is through
bullying
and power grabs. And when you've got that much testosterone and chemicals going through your body as you know, are going through puberty, that those lashes out become easier to do, I think. And I just didn't care if people didn't like me that much. Well, I cared if people liked me. I just didn't care if certain people didn't like me.
That's very mature at that age. I think a lot of people, if they were that mature, would attribute it to an upbringing. But I don't know if your parents had those types of conversations with you like at that age.
I mean, they were big on supporting me for who I was in a lot of ways. Like they maybe not have been so supportive on theater, but that was, again, came down to money. They were more concerned about how I was going to like pay my bills.
At the end of the day, they all want what's best, right?
They want what's best, right? And so, I don't know. And I guess being alone for that long, like I was comfortable with myself, so it didn't matter if anyone else was comfortable with me. And like if I was comfortable with myself, the right people would come to me.
Didn't sound like you had a cell phone to distract you at the time.
I did not, no.
That's another thing that some of our peers are talking about right now as they're having kids is like making the decision to not allow phones and having the kid learn how to create things or just learn how to just be bored, right?
That's a big thing. Like my kid, she loves TV. She loves TV. She's a pandemic baby.
Yeah.
We were stuck inside for so long. It was impossible to avoid screens.
Right.
But on road trips, no screens.
Wow.
We sing songs. We talked to each other. We pointed things out the window. And we let our kid be bored because it's really important to be bored. That's where innovation happens.
Yes. Awesome. I love that. It's been a theme recently for me, so it's in the top of my mind. At what... Any formative moments in college then? Any shows that stood out or any friendships or relationships?
I met so many incredibly talented people in college. All people who, you know, and when you're that age, everything's important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I had a group of people who were all very talented, were all very into their work. There was a lot of theater we created from scratch, a lot of like writers who wrote plays.
Was your circle pretty insular with just theater, or did you have a very like broad network of a variety, right?
I had a variety. I mean, there's always like theater centric because like, you know, I'm working in the mornings, I'm going to classes during the day, I'm going to rehearsal at night. So again, leaving the house at 6 a.m., getting home at 11. That's generally just that's how my day worked. So like you were spending a lot of time with theater people, but I had, because I hadn't left the state, I had a lot of friends or acquaintances from high school that were still doing things. And then I also lived on campus. So like I had friends in my dorm. I was able to make friends that way. And I also like worked at the bookstore, which was the like literal center of campus. So I met people from all walks of life who I worked with.
Were there aspects of that part of your life that contributed to confirming that theater is for you? Did you notice like growth in yourself respective to theater?
I did. Yeah. I got better at it. I got better at creating it. I learned.
And it was still challenging enough, right?
Still challenging. Yeah. I like my freshman year, I got cast in one of the main productions, which was a big deal, I guess.
For college or for the town?
For college.
Nice.
And it was in spring semester, and I got cast in the main production. And they don't cast freshmen; that's not a thing they do.
Wow.
But we had a visiting professor who was like, "No, I just killed the audition. Absolutely knocked it out of the park." Right.
So walk us through. So how much time do you have to prep for the audition, and then how long was the audition?
Well, the auditions are normally monologues, which you can have a little bit of time.
And is this something you were familiar with, like this specific audition?
No, because that's not how it worked in high school, right?
It's like tone and like inflection points. Like, how do you even come off?
Yeah. And it was very difficult. I'm still terrible at auditioning. I'm really bad at it. I'm great at callbacks, though. That's where I shine.
What is that?
So callbacks, usually you get sides from the play itself.
Okay.
Or there's some exercise, and it requires a lot more. You don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes they'll send them early. But basically what it comes down to is you either spend a ton of time memorizing it so you know it perfectly, which can bite you in the butt anyway, because then it's too robotic and too rehearsed, or you have to be good at improving and sight reading. Well, I knew how to sight read from being in choir. I could easily look at a page from here and understand what's going on, and I was good enough to like live in the moment to do it. So I do well in callbacks, but I just have to get the callback. That's the hard part, because I didn't actually get an auditioning class until like my senior.
Okay, so the process is you audition, and then if you do get a callback, that's what we call a sight reading. SIGHT?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it's usually you read sides, and they call them sides because they're just like pages from the actual script.
Oh, wait, scenes. SIDES?
Yeah, sides.
Sides.
Yeah.
But that's like on the go. It's like you have like 5 seconds.
They'll put you on like out in front of the table of director.
Are you reading with someone else?
And you're reading with somebody else. You're reading with an actor who's playing a different character. Oh. So you're not only you're not just reading it. You are in the space. You're moving. You're trying to show blocking. You're trying to show connecting with your partner on the other side of the stage, right? So you have to do all of these things all at once and do it, and while doing that, make a choice that is interesting enough for them to keep you there or bring you back to a second callback.
That's so cool. What aspect of at that time, or what things did you take away that have been so impactful to your success as let's say auditioning or sides?
Making choices, making a bold choice, because I still use it in my work today, being a game master. A choice between making a strong choice in the character that you are. It's not always the right choice, but making a choice.
Okay.
In the moment, being like, you can sit there and look at a character, come up with a backstory, figure out where they're from, that sort of stuff. But then in the moment, you have to make a choice about how this character is feeling in that moment. And no matter how preposterous, just run with it. Yeah, you got to run with it. As soon as you make the choice, that is the choice you've made, and you have to dive into it 100%. Otherwise, it's not believable. I've seen a few improv shows at Second City, and yeah, like you instantly know that the decision that they made is a little crazy, but they keep going with it. Yeah, you keep going with it. And like sometimes you make a great choice and then it works out, and sometimes you make a bad choice and then you try to alter it slightly. That's so cool. But yeah, and it's a similar choice. Like even when I do it with game mastering, like my players will surprise me and they'll be like, I want to talk to that guy, and I'm like, that guy doesn't exist. Okay, his name is Fred and he is a farmer and he sells horses. He goes, yeah, you just gonna get the horse. Gonna cost you 60 gold. You had to make a choice. That character didn't exist 5 seconds ago, but now he is, and now he's Did you feel like you had to take any extracurricular classes to help you thrive in theater? It's part of the education was doing theater, was creating theater, right? So my work study was in the shop. I built sets because I had worked construction as a high school job, so I had experience. So I built sets, but on top of that, even if I didn't have the work study, they make you do a certain number of hours free in costume shop, in makeup, and this, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
So that they kind of put that into it already. That's the extracurricular. And then during the summer, they had a professional repertory theater that did shows during the summer, and you could get hired to do that. So I worked at the shop one year. So the repertory theater they usually do 2 to 3 shows.
Oh.
And it's in repertoire, which means the actors will be in multiple shows.
Oh, wow.
So they'll hire professional actors from around town or bring them in from Chicago, New York, wherever. And they're part of the union, some of them. And so they bring them in and they'll run 1, 2, 3 shows and get paid for the summer, basically.
Oh, wow.
But it's an opportunity for the students to learn how professional theater kind of works.
And I love it. I think they get a taste of every aspect of it. And at this point, you probably know people in all aspects.
Yeah, I mean, my first freshman year summer, I built sets. I ran the soundboard, and I had a friend who was stage managing. And then the next summer, I got cast, and so I was on the acting side of it, which was amazing.
Would you say that's probably your favorite aspect of it?
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite aspect.
And I know pre-recording, you said you do a lot of admin work for day job. Is there a reason why you don't find something within theater, like set design or something like that, with your background in construction? So just you still have like that, ear on the ground, foot in the door type aspect within your day job.
Well, I didn't get a degree in like scenic design or anything.
Okay,
right?
Which is required.
It is. It is.
Oh,
Because
wow.
like when you're if you're doing those things, you are not only helping build it, you're doing the design, right? And then you're overseeing it, and there's different roles and stuff within it. It is difficult to have to get your foot in the door as just like building sets, right? Because a lot of those are union jobs as well now.
Okay.
And I also don't love
like separate unions, like one's for actors.
Yeah,
one's
there's
for costume,
there's one for
hair, makeup.
Actors. Is it actors and stage managers? Is equity, I believe. I can't remember, but there's actors equity is what it's called. That's the union, and then different unions will have based on the theater itself. And it was not something I pursued. Right.
Okay.
I was not interested in the scenic design portion of it. I just enjoyed working with my hands because I knew how to do it.
So then, if you could, like, what aspect of theater would just thinking for someone else who has this dream of performing, but they do want to keep their foot in the door, is there an aspect within theater that they could pursue as a day job?
Yeah. I mean, scenic design, lighting design, sound design, those are all things that you can do,
Which
not
is like
just in theater.
So scenic, is that a subcategory of set?
Scenic is set.
Scenic is set.
Yeah.
Okay.
You could be a prop master and make decent money.
They need degrees for that, right?
You don't technically have to, but like to get the tools and the understanding, because some you'll use CAD, you'll use a lot of tools that you can't learn without getting the education.
Whereas, what about the other stuff?
Well, like sound design is huge, right? But how do you can self-teach sound design.
Yeah.
But generally your first gigs, when you're getting into theater and such, come from that production. You can create a resume based on student productions, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the best way to get in.
That's tough. Yeah. So it's also a who you know type thing as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Right.
It's
Who you
huge
know.
who you know.
And you said the upside to your current day job is, the flexibility to pursue theater on the side. Whereas, like, I wonder how many other day jobs would allow that.
It's hard to find. Like, that's why you find so many actors being servers, living the restaurant life, because they can find someone to cover their shift.
Did you try hospitality?
I did. I worked as a waiter for about 6 months. It was not for me. I worked retail where I was for me.
Okay.
I was able to do it, but then I started wanting my holidays back.
Sure.
And so I got into retail.
And that was separate, right? Hospitality and retail? So with hospitality, what was the aspect of it that you didn't like?
I wasn't a fan of restaurant culture.
So it wasn't certain restaurants; it was all restaurants to you.
Well, I only tried one.
Right. Okay.
I only tried one. I'm sure it's better elsewhere. I was at a chain restaurant.
Oh. Okay. Was this back home or over?
That was back in Nebraska during college, I didn't make a lot of money. Right, and like it was never reliable. You know, I was working in like almost suburbs.
Which is that's a common theme, right? The consistency.
Yeah,
potentially.
And if the tips weren't good, then I made a terrible night. I'd be there for 6 hours and I'd make minimum wage, and it was like, what's the point? I could make over minimum wage working retail. At least I know what my paycheck is, and I can set my budget around it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I preferred retail, and I found I was a better salesman through retail. I was able to upsell people and suggest things and create a kind of like a relationship with customers and stuff.
Well, the other key thing to success in retail is believing in the product or service that you're selling, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's when sales are easy.
Right. It doesn't feel salesy anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Right? If you're selling a legitimately good product that is going to help someone, then all you have to do is tell them about the product.
Yeah.
Then it sells itself.
So, let me know if we're skipping any formative moments, but I'm assuming the next step is making your way to Chicago.
Yeah.
Did you come with peers? Did you know someone here? What was the move?
Yeah, so I graduated the summer of 2010.
Okay.
I was planning on sticking around for about a year or so to just work, get some money.
Yeah.
So I had just some money so I could find a job, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
I had a friend who was like, hey, I'm got to be there at this date, which is 4 days after my graduation, and I need a roommate. Why don't you just come? And I'm like, that's insane. I don't have any money. He's like, you can sit here and not have money in Nebraska, or you can go to Chicago and not have money in Chicago. I was like, that makes a lot of sense to me. And so we went there, we found a place, and we went to sign a lease, and they're like, yeah, we don't know you. You don't have a job here. You need a cosigner. Well, they got cosigners. Their parents cosigned. My parents weren't going to cosign.
Okay. Well, how did they feel about you moving?
They didn't love
suddenly.
it. They didn't love it.
Okay.
They didn't love it. Though they wanted their family close, right?
Yeah.
It just makes sense, right? They were scared. You know, the news hates Chicago, even back then.
Yeah. So since then, has their opinion changed? Have they visited you?
Yeah, they have visited a couple times. They still don't love it. I mean, I take them. They like the food.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, what's the language that will get through to them, and maybe food, right?
They do. They really enjoy the food.
Yeah.
You know, they always come. It's tough because when you're a farmer, you can't come during the beautiful times in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
So spring they're planting, summer you're just tending, right?
Yeah.
And then the fall you're harvesting.
That's the majority of the year.
So they really only come when it's gross out. The first time they came, it was miserable.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was terrible. Like it was too cold to walk. Like they wanted to go on the boat tour. It was too cold. Couldn't do it.
Oh no.
And so well, I could do is well, we can go into a restaurant, right?
Okay.
And that's all we could do.
Oh wow.
Excuse me. So they love the food. And now that I have a kid, they're more willing to visit, right? So.
Oh, that's funny. So your roommate got a cosigner. Their parents got a cosign with you guys.
Yeah. And they told me I couldn't get a cosigner. I didn't have one. But they said,
was that enough? Were the parents enough? Or they were just going to cover his half. So what?
They wanted me specifically to have a cosigner. They wanted everyone on the lease to have a cosigner.
Okay.
And so they said that, or you have to have a job in Chicago. Well, I'd been working at this bookstore forever, which headquarters is based out of Chicago.
Oh.
And so I told my boss, I was like, hey, I'm in this really terrible position. I can't move unless I have a job there.
Yeah.
And he's like, let me make a phone call.
And were you already in Chicago at that point?
We were set to move in
this is all via
2
phone.
weeks. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So he makes a phone call, gets me a job in Chicago at a bookstore there part-time.
Nice.
And that's enough. We get signed. We move. And so we move into, I think North Center is,
That's a nice area.
Yeah. And you use one of those apartment finding places. And they're like, what's your budget? We're like $1,500. They're like, those don't exist.
So I was like, how? I haven't explored North Center back. When I say back then, early 2010s.
Yeah, 2010. Yeah,
2010. I'm sure it was still really nice back then.
Yeah,
but I find myself going there more and more these days.
Yeah. Well, it was a beautiful neighborhood. Like the neighborhoods themselves, the brownstones, the houses, those were all gorgeous. The side streets were perfect, right? I lived on Paulina, but like you'd go to Ashland, where the Ashland and Irving Park, you'd go around there to where the businesses were, and there just weren't any. There were a lot of abandoned storefronts. There was not a lot of consumer activity. You had to go over to the Southport corridor.
Is that by Lane Tech, or is that?
Yeah, right by Lane Tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
There just wasn't a lot. Now there's a ton. There's a Starbucks there. There's like a bunch of stuff going in, but that wasn't there. It was a ghost town when it came to businesses.
Okay.
And like Trader Joe's was brand new, and that was the nearest grocery store, right? And it was still quite a ways away from where we were.
Wow. So how was the move? It was a road trip?
Yeah, I packed everything I owned into a car.
That's
into my
awesome.
tiny little Monte Carlo.
That's awesome.
I just gave away a bunch of stuff because I was like, whatever, I don't need it.
But this is from your parents' house?
No, this is from...
Or you were living on your own?
I was living on my own in Lincoln during college. I lived on my own.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I packed everything, I gave everything else away, subletted my apartment to a friend, and I left. That was it, right? And yeah, we moved in, and just three idiots in an apartment.
You had a third.
Yeah, there was someone who went to college with us freshman year, and then he bounced to LA and then came back. He's like, yeah, I think I'm going to move to Chicago. I'm going to move with you. So he moved from LA.
That's so amazing. The universe was manifesting. It was meant to be.
Yeah, we were both just like, it just suddenly happened. He like messaged me on Facebook. He's like, hey, I heard you're going to Chicago. You got room?
Wow.
Like, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it helps with rent.
Yeah, exactly. It helped with rent. And we did find our $1,500 apartment.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Man. So what was it? What were your first thoughts on Chicago? What was it like within the first year?
I fell in love with it. I love the city so much. And it's just like, it was the biggest city I've ever been to. I got lucky because I got randomly paired with somebody freshman year of college who was from Chicago.
Oh, nice. Okay. So you heard some things about it.
Yeah. We were randomly paired. We're still really great friends.
Oh, good.
Like the algorithm did us well.
The college algorithm.
The college algorithm of putting random people together in college room dorm mates.
Okay.
But he was fantastic. Like he grew up, fluent in Polish, grew up on the South Side, like a couple blocks from Old Comiskey.
Nice. Okay.
Just real thick Chicago accent.
Okay.
Like, has a tattoo of Chicago deep dish that says, like he was just had nothing but great things to say. Mm-hmm. Well, in fall break, he took me back. He showed me the city. And it just sort of was like, this is incredible. This is awesome. And then while I was there, I had a cousin who had moved here and was like, I'm going to take you to a show, and took me to the Neo Futurists. And I was like, this is it.
Wow.
Like, this is the peak, right?
Wow.
And I fell in love with the city. And I worked retail, barely made rent.
The bookstore.
Yeah, at the bookstore. And I started auditioning. I just auditioned for everything.
Okay.
And the first thing we did was, anyone who is in theater and listens to this is going to laugh, who's been around for a while. We did Guerrilla Tango Theater, which is, it was this like pay to play sort of thing. Like, only this was a competition. Okay. So it started with monologues. There were writers and actors, and the writers would write a monologue, and you randomly paired with an actor who did the monologue.
That's fun.
And then the second one is you wrote a 2-person scene, and it was 2 actors and 1 writer. Okay. And it was a slow elimination until there were 2 groups of actors and 2 writers.
Oh, wow.
And the writers wrote a short 1 act.
Okay.
And they had to perform. And then the winners won, I don't even know if they won money. They might have won like $100 and a giant hot dog. That was like the shtick. Yeah, that was it. That was the first show I did in Chicago. But oddly enough, like I met people there that like I still have contact with and ended up doing projects with later on, because we were all just young, dumb, and doing whatever we could to make art.
Yeah.
And some of them are like really successful now.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so it's really funny to mention that anyone who's like in the storefront theater scene and got their start there, it was just like nightmarish to like work there. But you started however you could, honestly.
How difficult was it to get these auditions? And if someone was looking right now, where would someone look?
That's a hard question. I mean, back then, there like the League of Chicago theaters would post auditions. There were a couple websites that posted auditions. Otherwise, if you had specific theaters you wanted to work for, you had to like keep track of them on socials and stuff. But a lot of times the big ones kept their auditions private. So you either needed to get an agent to get into those big ones, or you needed to know someone. That's really what it came down to.
Did that thought ever cross your mind? Obtaining an agent?
I tried. I tried. Yeah.
And they what, turned you down?
I never got an agent.
Why not? Why is someone not worth someone's time, an agent's time?
It's all about look. It's the way they look. Because the way I look.
Oh,
yeah. I'm not. I'm not good looking, but I'm also not that instant recognizable thing. Because that's all they're doing. They're getting stacks of headshots, right? Yeah. And they're looking at that. Boom, done. Oh, you get 2 seconds
without
right?
even like their ability, and like
they'll glance at your resume. But if it's not something they need, if they, because they have certain clients, they know what they need at any given time.
There are certain traits that are, too generic?
Yeah. Maybe, or not generic enough. Because if they're doing a drug ad, if they're doing like some, medicine ad, they want a generic looking white dude, right? And maybe like, no, he's blonde. I need someone with brown hair, right? That's the thing. It is.
Were you auditioning for things other than theater? Like commercials or TV shows or anything like that?
Those there were some unpaid films that I did.
Like being a stand-in or an extra on a set.
I never got into that because I always had a steady job that would pay me more for a day's work than the extra work.
But it didn't interest you? Because you weren't really interested in TV or anything like that?
No, I was always interested in creating something.
Okay.
So like I liked the idea. I wasn't against just getting a part and doing it. So I wanted a hand in making.
More like writing?
Writing, I started getting into collaborative theater, which is you get a group of people, you get an ensemble together, and together you create some piece of theater. You might choose a source text, you might choose some source that you derive inspiration from, but then...
Sounds like Whose Line?
It's a lot like that. There's a lot of improv involved because you have nothing, right? You have a prop, right? And that's kind of what I got into. I got into this collaborative storytelling, this creation of theater based off something small and made it bigger.
I feel like through that vessel, it's very easy to tap into a state of flow.
It is, yeah. And if you get people that you can trust and whose artistic opinion you value, it just creates energy in a room. Like. I got a chance to do a new piece of work pretty early on in my career that was written by someone I knew in high school. And we just randomly ran into each other. I didn't even know he was in Chicago. But we ran into each other on the street randomly. And I was like, oh, hey, whatever. Yeah, it's good to see you. Whatever.
I know you from somewhere.
Yeah, I know you. Like, yeah, you were in the other Catholic high school that was about 45 minutes away. And he goes, oh, yeah, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm just acting. I'm finding gigs, whatever. And he goes, I have an audition. I'm doing a play I wrote has an audition tomorrow. You should come.
Wow.
And that's how I got the gig. And I got the role. I landed the role.
Yeah.
And then I met a director, Josh Sobel. Well, Alex Lubisher is the writer. Okay. Fantastic writer. Look him up. Like, just Midwest Gothic is the best way I can describe him. It's very good, haunting, good work. But the director, Josh Sobel, who still works with theater here in Chicago, but went to Cal Arts and is now in LA doing a bunch of work and film and stuff. He decided he wanted to do something completely different. Normally he takes a new piece of written work, workshops it, creates it, puts it on. That's how he works. It's like, I don't want to do that. I want to get a bunch of people in the room and create something brand new from something that already exists, from like a source text. And that's what he did. So we took, I'm blanking, a Lewis Carroll poem. We took The Hunting of the Snark. And, it's just a poem. It's not very long. And it's complete nonsense.
Wow.
Because it's Lewis Carroll. And he got a group, I think, of like 8 people to be in the cast. And he's like, let's make a play based off of this.
Wow.
And so we just did that, and we had no budget. We were in like the side room of Straw Dog Theater. They had which was essentially their bar space. And they're like, yeah, you can do it here. And so we did alley style theater. We sat like 45, 50 people in it, and it was tight quarters.
That's a lot of people.
It was tight. It was real tight. We only had, the stage across was probably like 6 feet.
Wow.
Right. And we created this like movement-based devised theater, and they're like, oh yeah, you can raid the attic for costumes and props, and that's what we did.
Fun.
So we used a lot of found objects and made them whatever prop we needed them at the time, and so we heavily relied on the audience's imagination and participation. So if I grabbed I had a croquet mallet. I still own it. I stole it. That croquet mallet was many things, and it was never once a croquet mallet. It acted as so many things. And all I had to do was like say like, oh, this is my gun now. And the audience would be like, yes, that's a gun. That's what it is. That's what we're using it as.
It reminds me so much of improv. Like, I guess you're already doing it, but did that thought ever cross your mind of like pursuing Second City or anything like that?
No, I mean, improv is an essential tool to being an actor.
Okay.
Most of the best actors are good at improv, right? Because things go wrong in theater. That's what happens, right? So you have to be able to work on your feet. And the best actors, no matter how much you memorize, you should always be on the precipice of forgetting your lines. You should be so in the moment that you don't know what you're going to say next because as a human, you don't know what you're going to say next.
Yeah.
We're always tumbling. It's just like walking, right? It's just perpetual falling.
Right.
That's what good acting is. And it's difficult to get to that point. It's not always possible in certain roles.
Most people are in their heads.
Yeah. You're worried about what your next movement is when you have to pick something up.
So it's that state of flow that keeps you at that precipice, at the edge?
Yeah. You should always constantly be forgetting your lines or at the almost losing your lines or what comes next because you're too in the moment to think about what's next.
And so in your perspective, what are some of the ingredients to cultivating a state of flow?
Experience with improv, being accepting of changing circumstances, trusting in your whoever your scene partner is, right? Whether that's the audience
vulnerable.
Being okay with being vulnerable, being okay with being ugly, because a big part of being on stage and getting nervous is this voice saying, "Am I pretty? Am I pretty?"
Oh,
and like you don't have to be pretty. You have to be authentic. You have to be, and sometimes authenticity is ugly, and that's okay. So, and it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing because you're letting go of your personal ego and instead adopting a character's ego.
Which, from that perspective, should be easier than said. Is easier said than done.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I loved it. Like it's when you're in the zone as an athlete or an actor, the adrenaline and the rush you get is the exact same.
Right.
I still it's the same.
It's funny because you know what it feels like.
I know exactly what it feels like. And they're
right?
like I sweat a little. My hands get a little cold and clammy, and like it's the exact same effect. And it's a great feeling, but it's not easy to do in either sports or acting, right?
To tap into.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of practice and a lot of innate skill too, I think.
So, catch us up till present day. What were some of the other formative moments that led to now?
Well, I did a lot of device theater. I did a lot of creating work. I helped create a theater company that I worked that I was managing director for.
Does a theater company need a physical location?
No, right? We never had one.
What is the construct of a theater company?
You have an artistic director. They're kind of generally kind of the head. They're the ones leading the artistic vision. Generally, the group gets together and creates what that vision is. The artistic director's job is to enact that vision.
Okay.
And they do that by helping choose plays that we're going to do or projects for the year that we're going to create and do.
So typically someone more experienced.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually it's a director brain oriented. Usually it's a director who is that artistic director because they're looking at the vision from a pulled back view as opposed to diving in like an actor would.
Sure.
And then I was the managing director, which is all business. It's the business side of things. It's making sure we have money. It's setting up, making sure we have fundraisers to fund those visions and those projects.
What would these fundraisers look like?
All sorts. Sometimes it was just show up and have drinks and dance. Other times it was our most successful one was we did a bake off. We did pies, and it was all different kinds, sweet and savory, and people could enter. And there was prizes that we got donated to the end, and people paid admission to come in, and they got to try all the pies, and they got to drink and purchase drinks while they're there. And that was the most successful one we had. To be honest,
that was enough. Pies, people buying pies were enough to raise that much money.
Yeah, we operated on shoestring budgets.
Okay,
you got to remember, I bring you back to the croquet mallet. I bring you back to that.
So, are a lot of these people in the production or in the theater company, just willing to do this for free?
Yeah,
purely for love?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. because they're all searching that high, that in the zone adrenaline rush that comes from performing.
Wow.
And sometimes you have to make your own work to make that happen. And I found that very quickly when I moved to Chicago. Is the best way to get on stage and do work is to create your own. And Chicago is primed for that, and still is, I think. Chicago is a great place to create your own work. It is not a place to make money doing theater. Because most people who are doing theater professionally are not, they have side jobs.
So what does that mean? Go somewhere else to build a resume and then come back when you want to make something?
Or you can build a resume here and then move. You can do it either way, honestly. It depends on what you're interested in. I was never interested in the fame of it, right? When I thought I wanted to go to Broadway, and then I found out I don't have a good enough voice for Broadway. I also found out I wasn't a leading man, which is very difficult, right? And then so there's a lot of things you learn that you learn a lot of times as an actor. You're just limited by what you look like.
Was that easy or hard to accept? And did you find solace in some of the ancillary roles?
It was difficult to accept.
Because everyone wants to be the hero in a story,
yeah,
right?
Everyone wants to be the hero in the story. And I think now that's kind of changing a little bit.
Yeah.
In these new films, people are taking chances on people that are not the leading stereotype.
The name that comes to mind is Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, right? Yeah, he's not exactly your leading man, but but like he's able to do it. He has the chops for it. And most actors do. They can, right? Yeah. But they get stuck into roles. I was always cast as the funny best friend.
Oh.
Like that was my type.
I see it though.
Yeah, right? You absolutely do. Everyone's got a type, right? And that's part of what I learned, a harsh learning. I had a professor who taught an auditions class for us, and he was not afraid to say the things out loud that you're not supposed to say out loud.
Okay.
And he told me, he's like, you're 20 pounds too heavy to be a leading man, and you're 20 pounds too light to be the fat best friend. And he's like, you have to choose.
Oh,
and I'm like, but this is what I weigh. Like, how do you
back in wrestling,
right? Yeah, I'm not cutting weight. I refuse. I won't do it anymore. I'm gonna eat what I eat. I live in Chicago. I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
So, and it was just it was a harsh realization.
Wow.
Right, and that's why so many people I think create their own work here, is because you can be anyone if you're creating your own work. Yeah. You can show that you have the range to do that.
So, I mean, would you post that on YouTube or and then just...
Well, for live theater, you save the money, you rent a space, you cast the people, you do the whole thing, you create a show and put it on.
We talked about the Magic Lounge. I feel like that's how they started too.
Yeah.
Kind of like grassroots, just bootstrapping it.
Yeah, you got to bootstrap it. You gotta create it. But it's the great thing is that's why they call it storefront theater in Chicago, because you're using all the abandoned storefronts. You rent found space. You rent spaces that are not traditionally theaters, and you put theater on in it.
Okay.
And it works because you can it doesn't matter what the space is.
It's kind of like So Far Sounds, but for theater.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. So I did that for a long time.
Very cool.
Finding roles here and there, whether I was getting cast by an existing theater company or creating work myself. And I got burned out, and I realized I wasn't going to make money. I wasn't.
Were you still at bookstore at this time? At retail?
Yeah, I was still working retail, and then I had moved from retail to sales.
Okay.
To inside sales. So I was cold calling.
What were you selling?
I was selling advertisement. I can tell you, I worked for apartments.com.
Oh.
I worked for apartments.com and CoStar Group.
Okay.
And I was really good at it.
Oh, why do you think? What made you good at it?
I have really good phone etiquette. People like to talk to me over the phone.
Okay.
I don't know why, but
were the people that you were talking to initially reluctant to buy anything? And
I mean, anytime you get a call from someone who's talking about something,
cold call, right?
Cold call is, you can be reluctant. I was very lucky that the product was very good. It was brand new. They relaunched the website. It was very user intuitive, and they also created so CoStar Group is their entire customer, or their entire money making scheme is having knowledge on real estate information. Right. In addition to that, they have websites that help sell and buy and stuff like that. But they're big on learning information about all properties across the world. So they had all this information on all these existing apartments, these multifamilies. So they took that information and they bought apartments.com, created this website, and basically created free advertisements for all of these apartments, whether you ask for it or not. And if you called and be like, I don't want this, I want this taken down, they take it down.
Oh.
Or you talk to me and I say, I can show you how to edit it for free and how to like log in. I'll get you created and you can like show you the features and stuff. And that was my sales pitch. Oh. I would call and say like, hey, your advertisement's out of date. Your free advertisement on our website's out of date. I'd love to show you how to use it, how to log in and update it.
Yeah. Well, and then let's say they're like, tell me more.
And I'd be like, oh yeah, so this is it. Here it is. I can send you the link, but if you go to apartments.com and search your address, this is how you'll find it. Or if the apartment has a name, you can search the name. And I'm like, and they'll look at it and be like, oh yeah, that is out of date. Oh yeah, we don't have any 2-bedrooms available. Oh, this. I'm like, yeah. So I can create, if you want, you can create a website and show you how to do it.
And the cost seemed fair.
It was free.
It was free.
Yeah, it was free. But then as we got into showing you how to do things, I'm like, oh, you don't have to worry about that. That's a paid feature. If you pay for, if you pay for a service or sign up with it, you'll get, we'll do this.
A lot of apps are doing that these days.
Yeah, we'll send out, like, you paid enough, we'd send out a professional photography crew and take photos of your apartment.
Like a one-stop shop.
Yeah, and we'll do like those 3D Matterport scans.
Yeah.
Where you can like move around the apartment and stuff.
Sure.
So those were premium packages. And so eventually that's how I'd make the money. They'd be like, well, I want to show up higher in the search results. I want to have these photos and these things. And that's
genius.
Yeah. It was great.
It made your job easy.
It made my job very easy. Yeah.
What was it like talking to so many strangers? That
was great. I
guess you're already very used to it, but
I would chat all day.
Would you describe yourself as an extrovert?
I would, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I need to go in and recharge batteries.
Right.
But yeah, I love talking to people. I love meeting new people, and I've been told I can find commonality with anyone.
Nice.
I pride myself on that. Right. Yeah. There are only like 2 people in this world who I dislike.
Oh.
Like, right. Or like that I personally know, I should say.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
I can have opinions about, whatever.
Yeah.
But like generally, if you take the time to talk to someone and ask the right questions, you get to know someone and you get to like them. Because,
I'm loving you right now.
Yeah. See, it's easy. It's not hard. Yeah. But then at the same time, I go back and I have to recharge because, I just got to sleep on the ground sometimes. I gotta see the horizon sometimes, and I gotta get out of the city, and that's getting harder and harder to do as I get busier and busier. But like, I have to take time, and I have to like not be around people to recharge that battery because I grew up not being around anyone. When my parents were gone, it was miles away from the nearest human, which was awesome in a lot of ways, but then also isolating and made me want to see people.
So that being said, like, at what point did you meet your partner?
So I met my partner my second year
here
in Chicago. Yeah.
Are they from Chicago?
No, they are from South Bend by way of Pennsylvania.
There's South Bend, Pennsylvania?
No.
Indiana or?
Has extended family in Pennsylvania, but lives outside of South Bend, Indiana.
Oh. But they were in Chicago?
They're in Chicago because they also went to school for acting at Notre Dame.
Oh.
And moved to Chicago, and we did a show together. We did the Fringe Festival, and yeah, we were in a show together, and so we had a showmance, as they call it.
Did you have any like specific lines, like scenes together? Or?
Yeah. We had. Well, I guess no, we didn't, because it was a monologue show. But we were always on stage together, right? Because it was a monologue show.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember she came in, said something. I had a witty retort. She had a wittier retort.
Oh, I love that.
And I just said, we're going to be friends. And she said, yeah, we are. And that was it. And then we were like 3 weeks later, we started dating.
Oh.
And then we've been together ever since.
Oh, so. I love it. That's pure. So you said you started playing, and feel free to fill in any details if I'm skipping. You said you started getting into role-playing games late, but in college. So we're past college now.
Yeah.
Is this something that you continue to do in your free time at this point when you moved to Chicago?
So I took a break. I played in there. I took a break from a lot of things just because I was trying to survive.
Just get you, right? Yeah.
And then I started picking it up again because I'd always wanted to, but it's the most difficult part about playing a tabletop role-playing game is finding a dedicated group of people who will meet regularly to play it.
And what's the average duration of these games?
3 to 4 hours each session.
That's why I never play poker.
Yeah. right? It takes a really long time, and you can have shorter sessions if you wish, depending on the gameplay.
Okay, but that was the hard thing you were.
Yeah.
Okay.
Scheduling is the biggest enemy.
Adulting, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I started getting back into it around like 5 years later, 2015, 2016.
That's a long time.
That's a long time ago. My friend, who I moved to Chicago with, who is also in theater. He's the artistic director of Red Theater. One of the co-artistic director.
How many different companies are there?
Oh my God, there's so many.
So many?
There's so many. Oh. There are more. Chicago is unique in that it's a lot like the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Edinburgh Fringe Festival, there's like 80 plays happening every hour, right? And that's a festival. But in Chicago, it has like the most productions happening at any given time of anywhere in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
It's just because there's a lot of really small theaters doing 1 or 2 shows a year.
Okay.
But they regularly do it. There are these small storefront theaters that are not that are professional because they take money, whatever, but they're not big budgets, right? They rent their space.
Sure.
They might have a storage unit for their costumes and stuff, but they create a ton of work regularly.
Oh, wow.
But he pulled out a game, and this was a much easier game than Shadowrun, which is very crunchy in rules. And it's like you roll for your character. You don't even create the character. You just roll dice, and it's like, okay, I rolled this one, that means I'm this, and I rolled this, and that means I'm that, and you smush them together, and that's your character.
Okay.
And it was like post-apocalyptic, very simple rules, and it was super fun. I played a flammable skeleton prospector. That's what I rolled, right? Just really silly.
Is this at the apartment or somewhere else?
This is at the apartment.
Nice.
Yeah. And we would play it here and there, and we played it for probably a few months before, scheduling happened and we had to put it down again, right?
Would it be an ongoing game or like a one-off type thing?
It was
night?
ongoing.
Wow.
Yeah. So we played for several months. We'd meet like once or twice a month.
Wow.
And then we finally just couldn't get scheduling to work. And so it dropped off and we're like, oh, that's fine. It's not that big of a deal.
So was there an ending?
No, we never ended it. That's the problem. Yeah. Like we had chapters, like we cleared out that we had a chapter where one thing ended and we were starting a new one and like didn't get it finished. Right.
Wow.
But you can create very short stories within them, right? You can like what we do in a lot of our events and bars is your whole story is in that 3 hours.
Wow.
You have a beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah.
And so it's all encompassed into one little journey. But then the opposite is also true. Like I've been running the same game for over 3 years with the same group of people.
Sure.
And the story is massive, right? The whole world has become huge.
Are there points where if you were to pick it back up, like you would forget some details or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Recaps are really important.
Recaps.
Taking notes. The player who takes notes is the most important person. Well, second most important person to the person who picks up the cursed magic item.
What's the cursed magic item?
That is a trope. There are magic items that are cursed.
Oh,
and like when you become an adventurer, you get a little power hungry, right? And like loot, you always want loot, right? You want powerful magic items. And sometimes adventurers will grab something because, oh, that's a cool sword. It's glowing. Well, also it holds the ancient sentience of Demi-Lich, or whatever, right? You can make up all sorts of stuff.
That's funny.
That creates these incredible tension-filled moments and story bits that never would have existed if they hadn't picked it up.
Yeah.
Because it is, in essence, still collaborative storytelling.
Yeah, I love all these little themes that you can practice and cultivate through this vessel of theater and role-playing games, whether it's the ability to tell a story. I'm sure there's some game theory to this. And then I think probably the best part is like just cultivating a community as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It is all of those things all at once.
Yeah.
Because it is part board game, it's part collaborative storytelling, it's part theater, and it's part just hobby, right? Because there's so many hobbies that go along with it. So it's not just actively playing the game. You have like the miniature hobby, right? So you can get little miniatures for all the bad guys, your characters, and then you can paint those miniatures. That's a whole other hobby that you can get into, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the hobby of you can make the actual terrain or map building.
Oh, wow.
That you can do that, right? And all these take so much, there's so much energy and their own sets of like tools and programs that you can use to make them. And then it leads into, cosplay. You can dress up as your character,
Wow.
right? And so it is this huge community and interweb of nerds.
Yeah.
That's
so
hobbyists.
Cool.
Yeah.
So did you identify a demand for these things, and or when I say these things, I mean a demand for an opportunity for people to come together and play these games, and you weren't finding this like around?
I wasn't. No. Oh. I mean, it was so difficult for me just to find enough people who could play, right?
Right.
And I tried to. Game stores will offer nights of Dungeons and Dragons. They have like organized play for Dungeons and Dragons called Adventures League, and I was like, you know what? If I can't get a group together, maybe that's the answer, right? So I went there, and because of my background, because I grew up in a small town, I missed a lot of popular culture. So like, I was just like I felt not nerdy enough. There was some gatekeeping I felt, and like they weren't actively trying to gatekeep, but they also weren't embracing newcomers with open arms.
Interesting,
right? And so like there wasn't a lot of help as to like rules and like how to get started or like, you know, stuff like that. The people who were there had already been doing it for years or already knew all the rules and stuff like that. And like you had to connect with someone individually in order to get that. But in that game store space, it was so loud and crazy, and they were sitting like 8 people at a table, and like I could barely hear the game master sometimes, or let alone someone next to me, and like have the time to be able to like have a side conversation to ask about rules and ask about stuff. And so I didn't feel very welcome. Okay. I'm like, there's got to be an option.
Would you go by yourself or with friends?
I would go by I did go with a friend. Yeah. Eventually, we started going pretty regularly, and that was pretty fun. But then again, we would just rather have our own game then if we could do it.
That's so interesting that although you are going or participating in something that you're familiar with, you can still feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. And I wanted to change that. That's like there should be a way for someone who wants to try this hobby, because that's the thing. It was so hard to get into, right? You either like, if you wanted to do it, you either had to know somebody who already had a group that wanted to bring you in, or you had to be the one who to buy all the books, become the game master, and cultivate a group.
Which is a kind of, it's an investment,
yeah,
right?
It's an investment, but it's also, and it's a lot of work, right? Yeah. And there had to be an option out there for someone who just wanted to dip their toes in without a lot of work.
At this point, you knew a lot of storytellers.
I did. I knew a ton of storytellers. They just didn't know the rules yet.
Right? Well, and what happens when you tell these storytellers, make your own rules, right? Go run wild.
Then they start to go wild, and then you get a whole new set of rules that they can teach someone else.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So I started talking with my business partner, Richard Costes. We met each other. I did a revival of a show that he did.
Oh, so also theater.
Also theater.
Okay.
And that's how we met each other. We've never, I don't think we've ever worked together on a show before. We were kind of just like ships in the night for a lot of things. But he told me he loves D&D, and I was like, yes, I found someone, right? And so I started G-chatting him. I'm just like, hey. So I was online, started chatting him, and we started chatting. He's like, do you want to play D&D? I'm like, yeah, I want to play D&D. I was like, yes, let's play D&D. And so we started just like chatting, and we started talking about rules, and basically through G-chat, just text.
Wow.
He's
right then and there.
Yeah, he started teaching me. He started teaching me how to play D&D, and like he gave me access to some of the PDFs that he had, or like he paid for a subscription to some things, and like let me look at it and stuff like that until eventually I bought my own.
Now, when you say subscriptions, it's like these are two different adventures, or
so. There is now there's several tools out there, right? Wow. So there's D&D Beyond, which originally wasn't even owned by Wizards of the Coast, the owners of Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
But they recently...
Well, now they're buying
They've recently bought it.
Oh, wow.
But that was originally just a way to create characters and get all the rules in one place. And it created like character creation system. So you could easily log in and create a character without owning all the books.
Okay.
So you could have fun creating characters, basically, is what it was. Yeah. Well, they bought it and turned it into more of a tool, and so then it became, or then they like made an agreement, and then it was a paywall. Like if you wanted certain content, you had to buy that book through the platform, and then you could get options for your character or etc. Right? But now it's even expanded further. Now it's a virtual tabletop, so now you can roll dice on it. You can chat with each other and play a game through the service. And there are lots of other virtual tabletops like Roll20.net. We use Foundry. There's a bunch.
Wow.
Right? And so he had subscriptions to these because he's been playing online with people for a long time. That's kind of how he got started in the hobby. He's done purely text-based games.
Okay.
And it's like for years, he ran a game for random people on the internet.
Wow.
He went on Reddit. He's like, I want to run this campaign, and got players, and they played for years.
Wow.
Yeah. Never met in person. only played online. And
I love that, because you would hear people that would play Call of Duty online and eventually meet in person. And I'm sure something like that could happen as well. Like, that's amazing.
I mean, my players for my paid campaign that's been going for over 3 years, I have yet to meet them all.
What?
Yeah.
That was online?
Yeah. It's online. They're in 3 different time zones.
Oh my God.
And they all got together and met. They were like, hey, let's all meet. They all met in Arizona. They went out to get drinks, and I'm the only person who hasn't met everybody. My hope is, I don't know if it'll happen. My hope is for the finale, the last session, I can get everyone together in one room and play a game in person and roll real dice.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how we got started. We started talking about it. Okay. And then we're both in theater. We've both created theater. We've both ran and been part of theater companies. We started spitballing, this is, I feel like this is so much work to be a game master. So you should get paid to do it. The amount of work and energy and memorization and writing that goes into it. Like
people would pay.
I think people would pay for it.
Yeah.
Because honestly, at this point, it's so hard to find a game. I'd pay for it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the only one having these thoughts, right? This was happening elsewhere. But then we're like, hey, you know what? We're theater makers. We create events regularly, professional ones that people pay to go to.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we do this? And so we started talking about what we do, how we would be able to do that. We can absolutely do this. We can create events. People will pay for a ticket price like it's theater. They'll sit down. They'll play a game with us.
Yeah.
And then we can take some home, and we'll put some off to the side to start building this business. And that was 2019 in the fall.
Wow, it's been a minute.
Yeah.
Good for
and
you
so
guys.
2019 we started the business, and it was we're like, this is great. We're gonna do it. We're in the new year, we're gonna have our first event. The first thing we're gonna do is we started building merch. We're like,
was it virtual when you started?
No, we were planning on doing it in person. We both had production. We both had shows or something we were doing. And we both,
okay. So it was just officially started, and then the first game didn't really.
Yeah, we started the business and set the groundwork of what the business was going to be.
Okay.
And then so we had our business plan. We were official. We started getting merch basically.
Wow.
Because we're like, oh, this is great. We can sell dice trays and this stuff, and I can make those, right? And so we started doing that, and we're like, we'll start planning our first event for March. Well, March 2020 rolls around.
Right.
Everything gets locked down.
Yeah.
And now what? This is not great. We're like, well, and Richard says, well, I run games online. It's not hard.
Yeah.
So he teaches me how to use Roll20, and then at that very time, I'm like, I had been talking with a friend, and he knew what I was doing, and randomly one of his old professors put a post. He's like, I want to get a group together to play D&D online. We can't see each other, but does anyone know any game masters that's willing to run a game? We'll pay.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he was like, I have a friend.
Yes.
And so this guy was a dean of college who did this. And so he paid for 2 groups to play 2 weekly games.
Wow.
And so he was paying for a total of 10 or 11 people.
Nice.
To play weekly. And so that's how I made money during the pandemic.
Nice.
I was locked down. I lost my job. But I ran these games for months and months and months.
Did each person in the game need a computer? Right?
Yeah.
It was because everyone's at home, right?
Yeah, everyone's at home, and
yeah.
You don't have to have a camera, but it helps. Okay. It helps to see emotion and people's faces to help understand their intention.
What was were you still in theater at the time, or did they shut down?
Everything was shut down.
Everything was shut down.
Everything was shut down.
So you had the bandwidth to focus on this.
Yeah, I had made a switch slowly away from theater already, and I was starting to get into voice work. And it was going really well. I was getting a lot of gigs.
What kind of gigs?
I did a lot of educational work for nonprofit. So I was reading science articles and history articles and stuff like that.
Would you ever come upon your work?
I have never come across my work in education because it was more for like K through 12.
Oh.
I did some work for.
Do you still do it now?
I do. I do it less so, mostly because the pandemic then made every theater actor and live actor switch to voice acting. And I didn't have an agent. I was getting all the work for myself. I didn't need an agent because I had made these connections. Then by the time I needed an agent, well, all the agents had their actors already.
What piece of voice work would you? What's ideal for you?
I love character
What would you really
work.
enjoy doing?
I would love doing video games.
I
would love doing video games.
I was just gifted a PS5. My last one was a PS3.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I kind of just stopped gaming for a really long time, and then we're playing, what are you playing? We're playing Spider-Man 2 right now. We're playing Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanna get back into
There's
it.
tons of work in there for voice actors, right?
Right.
And incidentally, a lot of ways people get into D&D and role playing games is through like Critical Role, which is a bunch of professional voice actors who do video game work, who got together and started playing D&D and live streaming it. And they're huge now, right? They're selling out arenas to live play now.
Oh, wow.
And like a lot of them have won video game awards for voice acting.
Oh, wow.
Right? The game master Matthew Mercer, who basically helped teach me how to be a good game master when it comes to like storytelling.
That's so cool.
He if you've ever played Overwatch, he plays the cowboy.
Wow.
I can't think of that. McCree.
Okay.
That's him, right? He does a bunch of stuff. I think he played Ganon as well.
Oh, wow.
In the latest Zelda.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So like big time, right? But you'd never see their face. You wouldn't know who they were.
Yeah.
But so that started getting really big, and it just seemed to like flow into place. And so I got this work, and I started putting like 50 to 60% of what I was bringing in into the company, just being like setting aside. This is for when we go live, right? And so eventually, for about a year, that's what happened. And then Richard got an online game together, and then around the time they started opening things back up again, I had a connection, an old theater connection, going all the way back to Gorilla Tango, that terrible little theater company. I had done a scene with one of the actors there. Well, they ran a gallery space that was connected to Split Rail called the Martin. And they're still open right now.
I haven't been there yet.
I think they're closing down.
Yeah.
But I had a friend who had their artwork on this gallery. I reconnected with Whitney, and I was like, hey, do you do events in this space? Like, what's up? And so we decided to do it because we decided to go with them because they were checking vaccination cards at the door.
Sure.
And she was an incredible help to like get us started, right? To get us in the door and like give us a space to try it out. And it helped that their food was incredible as well because people got to sit down and enjoy a meal because part of the experience is so communal and it takes such a long time that like food and drink is such a part of it. So it's like you're sitting down at a table. It makes sense to share a meal together. And
I dropped your name to Paulie G's.
Yeah.
He's open.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Yeah. All you gotta do is reach out.
Okay. All right, I will reach out because it's like, honestly, like I love checking out new spaces.
Okay.
It's super fun. Sometimes it doesn't work,
Have you been there?
I have not yet.
It's conducive, I think, to what you're accomplishing. Yeah.
Yeah. And we made it work. We had a table. We had 4 tables, I think, the first one.
Nice.
And we were sold out.
Wow.
We did not make money. Because we thought we wanted to like elevate the experience, so we printed a bunch of maps, which printing costs a lot of money.
It does.
So we ended up losing $40 or something like that.
But the fact that how many people showed up, like the fact that people showed up, right?
Yeah, we had 24 people showed up. We were sold out, 4 tables, six people at each. Right?
That alone is like reassuring.
And our game masters got paid.
Yeah.
Right. Like no one didn't get paid. Our game masters were made.
And these are people that say they're willing to do it for free, but you want to compensate them. Right?
Yeah, no. When right out of the gates, we're like we're paying people.
Right.
We spent too much time in Chicago Storefront Theater not getting paid.
Right.
Like we're not going to do it. We're going to try to pay people for their work, and we're really big about that too. If we're buying adventures or our game masters are running pre-written adventures, we're like okay, we have to buy it. Even if you as a game master already own it, we as a company are going to buy it. We're going to purchase it so that person is getting paid for their work.
Oh, nice.
Just because it's important, right?
Yeah,
it's nice to share, to be able to read content without buying it first.
Right,
but like if we're actively going to use it, we have to own it.
That's awesome.
And it's important, right? I want to get paid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so should everyone. And it still is very difficult because things are expensive. And
well, to be honest, your rates are low.
for the experience, they are.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just like, you said, what, $25? $25 is the average, right? That's
$25,
what?
yeah. Yeah. And like for 3 to 4 hours of entertainment.
Right.
We try to keep it low because we're also partnering with the spaces, right? With the venues. The whole point is we're bringing people in who are also going to drop money on food and drink.
Yeah.
So we try to keep the price reasonable so people will A, come back and do it often.
Yeah.
But B, they'll have money to spend on food and drink so that our partners are happy too, right?
Yes.
And we have a razor thin profit margin.
I know. I can't imagine. Yeah.
But if we have big events, that's when we make money. Small events, we won't make money. We'll break even or make a few bucks, but our game masters get paid every single time.
Sure.
And all that does is create good experiences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
For our employees.
Enough to
for
spread
people
the good word and then come back.
Yeah. And we're finding that a lot of people who are coming regularly, they find a game master they like. And a lot of it's a great problem to have, but most of my game masters, I'm like my really great game masters, I stopped being able to book for events because they were booking private campaigns that are
and
regulars.
you don't want to make them sign exclusivity clauses and
well they're working through us. We work as agents. We book them that group, right? So we just take a lower fee off of it. So we act as agents. We take
but
a small percentage.
what's stopping them from taking these private
yeah, well
games?
We're actively booking them for those private gigs. So like we are finding groups that are looking, a group of 4 that wants to have a private campaign that's ongoing, and then we'll book a game master for them.
Okay.
So we're having a lot of our customers switch into that private mode to do a more longer term campaign.
Gotcha. Well, that's fun. That's good.
Which is great. And it's like we take less money, but we also offer tools for our game masters too. So we pay for their virtual tabletops.
That is an incentive to stay with you guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like agents, when the first time we were talking about like, we'll act like agents. Agents take 10%. And we're like, well, but agents past the hiring process don't do much unless they're renegotiating contracts and stuff, right? So
provide value.
Exactly. How do we continue to provide value? Well, we do that through our subscriptions that we pay through purchasing of adventures.
Nice.
Help it like, hey, I'm super swamped this week. I need to enter these character sheets. Okay, well, let me log on and enter that for you real quick, right? Okay. So we're constantly trying to like continue helping if they need help scheduling, if they need help with a problem customer, like we swoop in for customer service or something like that, right? Luckily, we haven't had much of that, but
yeah. So at this point, are you thinking of scaling? Maybe like other, partnerships, collaborations with venues, trying to find other game masters. Like how is scaling?
We've been growing so fast.
Wow.
It's been really hard to keep up, honestly. Because a year ago today, we only had 2 or 3 events happening.
In a week or a month?
In a month.
Oh.
And
you have several in a week now.
Yeah. And now we have like, I think 13 or 14 monthly events.
Yeah. Wow.
And then twice a month events.
Wow.
And then on top of that, we have about a dozen private campaigns and that are running at least monthly.
Oh, wow.
And then we have, I can't keep track of them, but a lot of private one-off events, whether we do library programming, we do bachelor parties, birthday parties,
official partnerships with like Chicago Public Library.
No, not with Chicago Public Library. I've reached out to them. I can't find the person to talk to. It's tough. But some of the burbs, some of the suburbs, libraries we've made partnerships with.
What at the time? What seems to be the bottleneck for scaling?
Paying for the admin work that comes with it, because right now it's mostly just Richard and I. I run all the events.
Like you're not making enough to offload it to someone else.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it's just me doing a lot of the events.
2024, are you implementing that into a budget?
Yeah. So I'm one of the things is I'm starting to pay myself more. Right. We have enough.
Either that
up.
or off or
exactly. Right. Yeah. And we've started to offload some things. Like I've started giving profit percentages to people who are running specific events on the regular. So like, because I just have too many. And so if I can like have a specific event and that person is going to take care of ticket count.
There's ownership there. That's nice.
And there's ownership there too. Yeah. And we've recently brought on a new partner. The document's not signed yet. We have to create the document, but we're bringing on a partner to help who has been focusing on publishing, because all these game masters create their own worlds. They create their own adventures. There's no reason we shouldn't be putting these down on paper. And so we also are going to pay for social media because I'm bad at it and I don't want to do it. But yeah, that's just something I don't have time for, even if it's just takes the 5 minutes to like put a story on Instagram.
Yeah.
I also don't know what the algorithm likes. I don't know.
Well, you come to a point where you don't give a shit.
Right. I don't care anymore. Right. And that's the thing. Like I have I'll call her a mentor, even though she's my employee. Has just been in the industry longer than me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
She works for the guy who owns Gen Con, which is the largest gaming convention in North America. And she streams regularly. She's got a streaming show, definitely way in it. And she just yells at me constantly, like, you need to be on Twitter. I'm like, I'm not going on Twitter. I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, some of these, whether it's on Twitch or Twitter or YouTube, they're huge. These live streaming role-playing games the channels are huge.
Yeah, they're huge, and I'm just not with it. I find social media to be exhausting. And like, honestly, I would love to get off it if I could.
Yeah.
But I can't. I'm not allowed to. Like, I can't.
You can pay someone to do it for you.
Exactly. That's the hope, right? Yeah. And so we are scaling that way, and then we're bringing on this partner because now we're shifting gears. We're not doing just events. We're getting into streaming. Now we're doing live plays. We're doing, YouTube videos of like quick starts on new systems of rules. We call it Rough Start. And that requires a lot of work, right? So we're hoping that with like a Patreon, we can like take the money from Patreon and then pay the people that are creating, right? Like we're going to take 0% of that Patreon. We're not interested in that. We're going to give it to the people who are editing video, the people who are running the streaming system, right? Because there's got to be someone active making sure that everything lines up, right? Or that the sound is working. And then publishing, we brought on this publishing partner because we created this whole new world, a whole new rule system for this dinner event we did at St. Emmerich with Funeral Potatoes.
Nice, yeah.
And it was an incredible event. It was so much fun. I think people really enjoyed it. It was one of the stressful things I've ever done. You do enough theater, things are going to go wrong, but I've never had so many things go wrong all at once. And we still came out of it, right?
And
that's the key.
Still came out of it.
We still came out of it.
How many people were at that event?
It was a very intimate event, but we had 22 on night 1, and I think we had 15 on night 2.
So what was so chaotic?
It was just managing everything we needed. It was a very theatrical event. So we had costumes, we had lights, we had sound. We were in multiple spaces, so we were moving players and patrons from one place to another. So there was a lot of
interactive.
Yeah, it was very interactive.
Did Funeral Potatoes put on a tasting menu?
They had we did a 5-course menu.
This sounds like a $150 event.
It was a $185 event.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Because everything was brand new. And, we had, 5 professional actors as well.
Other Michelin star restaurants are, 180, 200 just for dinner.
Yeah, that's nothing, right? So, yeah. And it was like the fact that people still showed up, like at that ticket price was.
How many people at that event did you know and did you not know?
Honestly, I'd say I probably only recognized a quarter of them.
Wow, nice.
Yeah, from events.
Nice. You've built a reputation, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, and I think it helped. I mean, a few of them I think were followers of Funeral Potatoes too. Right.
Okay.
But I think the experience spoke to a lot of people because it was very unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. To get that sort of experience now, you have to go into full LARP.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what it was. Like there was a line in between that. So it was diet LARP.
That's funny. And then right under that is probably medieval times.
Yeah, right. Because we had some patrons come in and they wore their Ren Fair stuff. Some of them,
okay,
right? They kind of got into it. Like they only had, we sent out horoscopes for like their characters. We had them fill out a survey.
Yeah,
and they were like seemed like random questions, but they like told us a little bit about their. It was a personality test that we then used to assign them a character. And then we told them which character they were and what their horoscope was. We created horoscopes for them, and so we had this interaction of the world happening before they even stepped foot into the place.
Well, they're personally invested then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
So we built a story ahead of time so that they weren't coming in blind. Because the big question was how do you lore dump? How do you tell people about this world and give them all the history and stuff without monologuing or making them read a block of text?
Sure.
Right. And that's how we managed to do it.
That's very cool. That's a good segue into what else have you picked up on that leads to being a good game master? What do you impart on your team, on your game masters?
I am big. I mean, every game master has their own style, right? And it also depends on the table. Okay. I think the big part is being able to read your table, setting expectations about what the evening is going to be. Because if you have a group that comes to you and wants a specific experience, then you need to ask the right questions so that you can cultivate that experience for them.
Okay.
If you get a bunch of randos at a table, then it's your job to set expectation with what the experience is going to be that evening.
Sure.
And then once you have that set in place, for us, we run free session zeros. We call them session zeros because it's about helping them create characters, learning how their characters live in the world that they'll be playing in, and then adjusting the world to the expectations of what the players want. Because at the end of the day, it is collaborative storytelling. Without the players, the story does not exist.
Okay.
And the game does not exist.
Okay.
So it's important to be able to understand what they want, what sort of story they want to be part of, so that you can help mold it so their characters fit in it. Right?
Okay.
If you come in and be like, no, this is the world, and then someone creates a character based on a concept they have, and that concept doesn't fit in the world, and you just rigidly say well, it doesn't fit, well, they're not going to have a good time. Right? So you either need to mold probably ideally both needs to happen. You need to mold your world and you need to mold their characters so that they fit together.
Okay.
So session 0, setting expectations, that's number 1. And number 2 is making the experience feel cinematic. Making the players feel cool. Because combat can get, especially in D&D, can feel a little sloggy.
Okay.
It can be I attack.
Kind of like
I do
Pokemon.
this much damage. Yeah. Right? It can get stagnant.
Like cards. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's I've done this much damage, and then I mark this much.
So how does one make it cinematic?
How did they do the damage? Right? If it's if I have a sword, I swing my sword. No, you didn't swing your sword. You run up, you slide on the ground, you slide with your first attack, you slide across their ankle, putting a thin cut. The enemy falls down, trying to gain balance again, and you use the opportunity to stab them in the back. Right? That's cinematic. That's fun. That makes me feel cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
So if you're just saying, you attack, you hit, it's not very fun. Right? I
see.
You want to tell the story of combat as much as you tell the story of the role-playing parts.
Is there any part of the process to vetting potential game masters for you?
I do interviews.
Yeah.
When we first started, I had them run a one-shot for me, and I don't have time to do that anymore. So now, because professional game mastering has increased.
Other certifications? Are there mini courses?
Not for professional game master. And there's one where you can be a therapeutic game master I've seen online. I don't know anything about it. I don't know if it's legit or anything, but that's the only thing I've seen. But now there's a big website that you can log in and play online games. And they're huge. They're way bigger than us. But they focus only on online. They take a 10% commission, and all they do is run a website. Which, fantastic idea. The website works great.
Okay.
It is wonderful for pairing people up. It works really well, but it's only online, right?
Okay.
So I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah, training.
Oh, training.
Vetting and training.
Right, but they're doing no vetting, right? You can log in, create a profile as a game master, offer a game. So I interview people, and I'll ask for a resume. Doesn't matter what it is. It's great if it has some game mastering on there or some sort of performance. That's great, but you can send me anything. I want to see what sort of work you do. Does it involve working with people? And then I start asking questions based off of that, right?
Yeah.
It helps. The biggest question is, have you ever run a game for strangers? That's a big one. Have you ever played games with people you don't know? Because that's what this job is. Often, the answer is yes. It's I ran a game at a game store once for a bunch of randos, or I used to do it regularly, or I ran a game for my fiance's family and they loved it, right? Stuff like that. And so that stuff, that's a big question. I ask about how they handle session 0, how they handle safety at the table. And that's kind of how I do it, and to get an idea of how they run things.
That's a good start, yeah.
And that's really the best start. And then if they haven't been to one of their events, I give them a free ticket so they can come and see how it rolls. They get an idea of what a working game master works like in these environments, to see, like, A, can you handle it? Is it too loud? You're in a bar, right? Can you project?
Right.
Right. So it helps,
because they don't shut the bar down, right?
No, they don't shut the bar down. They'll turn the music down for us. Okay, but like, there's glasses clinking. There's people still talking. Like, we play in an arcade bar. Like, there's arcade games going on.
That's loud. Yeah,
it's loud. You have to be able to project. So like, we get a lot of
Emporium?
performers. Replay.
Oh, Replay. Okay.
Replay. That was actually our first event after
pandemic.
After the Martin, we went to Replay.
Oh wow.
That was some internet sleuthing. I found the owner's email.
Oh, nice.
Because I couldn't get a name or anything. I don't know how I found it.
Yeah. What are there other venues or restaurants that you're hoping to work with this year, 2024?
Yeah, we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, but we want to hit. I'd love to get to be on the south side.
South side.
I love to be on the south and west sides. Like, we've got the north side pretty hard covered. The burbs are aching for us to go, but it's hard to get out to the burbs. When all my game masters have cars.
What type of venues are ideal?
Places that have private rooms are really great, or set aside rooms like alcoves and such, because that helps with sound. Because the biggest enemy for us in any of these situations are sound. We want, if you can't hear your game master, it's hard to have a good time. So that's a big portion of it. That doesn't mean you can't have a good time. Like, we'll still pack 30 people into Replay, and people are yelling over each other and people will have a blast. It still works, right? But like, you get a more curated experience if you can control the environment a little more.
Okay.
Because like, we run at Sojourn, which is attached to the Davis Theater in Lincoln Square, and they have a nice little tucked away area. And it's perfect. And we usually only have one table, right? And just one table runs it, but it's a really, really quiet, comfortable environment.
What's that? Is it the Davis Theater? What's the one in Logan? The Logan Theater.
The Logan Theater, yeah.
They have a private room too.
Do they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
See? But I want to get to the south
More
side.
south
I feel like there's just not a lot of, there's not a lot of game stores down there. There's certainly there's plenty of people who want to play, right?
Yeah.
The further we go all the way down to Blue Island, that's too far south. That's
the suburb?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like Harvey, Blue Island.
Yeah. We go all the way down to Blue. We go to
Okay.
Blue Island. We do that. But I'd love to be in Copperville, right?
Where's that?
That's just near south side.
I never heard of that.
Copperville, I think, is just like,
we did talk about this on our pre-call, but like, is it pretty accepting or fair? It is accepting, but like, do you see like a good variety of people of color, genders,
Yeah, it changes based on location, I think, too.
Yeah.
But absolutely, I think,
or at least an interest, right?
Yeah. It is all walks in life, and I don't think that's how the hobby started. The hobby started with a bunch of white dudes in their basements, right?
Sure.
It is grown so far past that because of the ability to become a character and be whoever you want.
Yeah.
Like, you can be anything, right? You don't even have to be human.
Yeah.
It transcends. And so when you're sitting at a table, it doesn't matter who's sitting at the table. It's whose characters you're playing with. And you have to be accepting, because if you get into really heavy role-playing moments, you emotion is pours out of you. That's what role-playing does, right? It allows you to be vulnerable you still have armor on because you're acting through a character, but it is very therapeutic.
Yeah.
We once got hired to as a team building exercise for a bunch of psychiatrists.
Wow.
So because the owner was like, we need to talk about role playing, how it's beneficial, right? And so they found a lot of them didn't know what it was, and so they got a chance to play and understand and see how role play is effective, how you can lean into a character and work through things that you as a human might be working through, but still have a layer of separation.
Because it's not you.
Exactly.
But, and then that's so cool though. Like the lessons that you learn through that character could apply.
And your character grows. That's the point. They grow and change. Like, I've been playing, I play in a game.
Yeah.
And I've been playing the same character for over 3 years. he's not the same person he was when he started. The journey has changed him, both on paper and the rules, mechanics, but as their personality. And because and just like humans do, they've gone through a lot of experience that have changed their opinions about people and how the world works, right? For good or bad.
Yeah. We're coming short on time, but do you think, how long do you think it'll take to create a character?
Okay, so I can teach you how to play D&D very fast.
Okay.
The biggest, when you're playing D&D or any TTRPG, this is what happens. Me as a game master will set a scene. I'll say something is happening. Like say, okay, there's a bridge up ahead. It looks like there's a bandit guarding the bridge. It looks like he wants a fee. How would you like to approach? Do you want to approach him? Do you want to hide and go around him? Do you want to fight him? Do you want to just pay the toll or talk him out of it? How would you like to approach the situation?
I would like to try to find a way around.
Awesome. Great. Okay. So you probably, in order to do that, see if you can find a safe way to navigate, the first thing I'll have you do is make a nature check. Right? And so you have a skill that is attached to nature, right? And so if we get into numbers, I can do this a little bit, but that's it. And then you roll your D20, and then you add whatever bonus is tied to nature. And that outcome, that number, decides your failure, success, mixed success.
Is it like failure on the lower end and then success on the higher end?
You want to roll for high in this game, in Dungeons and Dragons.
So with that number, arbitrarily, let's say I get 16, what does that dictate when I have to roll? Like, let's say I'm going to go around this bandit and I have a nature of 16. What does that mean for me?
So say, like, you'll probably have like a plus 2, 3, 4, right?
Sure.
You roll a D20. Say you roll a 10 on your D20.
Okay.
You add 6, you get a 16. So for me, I have already set a difficulty class. I have a number in my brain as the game master. That is success. Right? So for me, it was a 10. You need to get a 10 or higher to succeed. You've rolled a 10. You've rolled a 12 with 10 plus your bonus. Okay, so you notice that you think there's a safe place to cross the river about a half mile down, but you're going to need to be quiet. So now you have to roll a stealth check to make sure the bandit doesn't see you. So that's it. That's role playing. That's a skill check of how we play role playing.
At what point does it change your turn? Like, does your turn change?
So we're not in turn combat now. If we had other people can, it's like, okay, that's what you're doing. You're looking for a safe place to cross the river. What are you doing?
And that's based on the game master?
Yeah. So the game master will then ask them. The other person is like, oh, well, I want to create a distraction. Right? And so that person talks about how they're going to do a distraction. Okay, and then you have to make a roll for something. Right?
That's awesome.
But all of these stats are based off your attributes. And so then that's where the numbers come in. So you have strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. And a lot of games are based on this, right? And I have a way to explain these to you. Take a tomato. Strength is how well you can crush a tomato.
Okay.
Right? Dexterity is how well you can juggle or throw a tomato or dodge a tomato.
Okay.
Constitution is how well you do in a tomato eating contest or how well you can stomach a rotten tomato. Intelligence is knowing that a tomato is a fruit.
Okay.
Wisdom is knowing that a tomato does not belong in fruit salad. And charisma is selling a bushel of tomatoes to a fruit salad salesman.
That's really good.
And that's your attributes. And these all have numbers. And so you're going to be really good at some things and less good at others. And like each of these skills are then attached to one of these attributes.
Okay.
So based on if you're an elf or a dwarf, like you get special bonuses. So dwarves are a little stronger, a little hardier. Elves are a little more dexterous, maybe more intelligent or more wise. And then your class goes into play. So like if you're a rogue, you're probably going to be better at stealth.
Okay.
If you're a ranger, you're going to be better at nature to get across that river.
Okay.
So that's when you start getting these roles in your party where certain characters are better at other things, and you rely on your fellow players to basically make it through and succeed on your adventures.
I've never had a walkthrough like that, and that seems very intriguing and appealing, and I can see why you can get lost in this.
Yeah, that's it. And it just goes deeper from there, but it can be as simple as that.
That's amazing. I'm looking for. We'll try it out one day for sure. That's so fun. Is there anything else we haven't talked about that you'd like to share, Christian?
I don't think so. I mean, if you've never tried a TTRPG, I really encourage you to. You don't. It does not have to be through us. The best way to play TTRPGs are sitting down at a table with your friends.
Nice.
It is. My business exists. Rough Magic exists because scheduling problems exist. And that's like, yes, we're professional game masters and we're performers, but we're also really just schedulers. We make games happen.
That takes a level of self-awareness to and humility to say.
Yeah.
But there's still a demand, right? So it's nice.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on. This was I wasn't expecting the amount of insight that I'm receiving right now. Where can people find you if you want to be found?
You can go to roughmagicgames.com. You can find us on Instagram at rough.magic.rpg. And honestly, that's the best way to find me. I have my own personal Instagram, but it's just photos of my kid. So
Christian, thanks for coming on. Good luck to you in 2024. Everyone else, till next time, stay curious.
Thank you.